I'm Steve Wilkerson, and I'm with Jim Saunders, Executive Editor of the News Service of Florida. Jim, this week, a new president for Florida State University will be chosen, and one of the candidates, finalist, is Senator John Thrasher of Jacksonville, former Speaker of the House and one of the Senate's most powerful members. Let's talk about that. At one point, it looked like he was a shoo-in, and then there were some protests or some controversy, and so they restarted the process. Let's talk about where we are now with that part, and then we'll talk about the effect on the Senate should he be selected. But let's talk about the controversy.
There are 4 finalists for the Florida State University presidency, and this has been a very controversial issue for months. Senator Thrasher is a big-time Florida State alumni and supporter. He got his undergrad degree there and his law degree, and while he's been in the legislature, he has funneled millions of dollars to the university. He helped create the medical school there, so he's very well known. He was also the chairman of their board of trustees at one point. So he put his, he made clear during the spring that he wanted to be the replacement for Eric Barron, who left the university to become president of Penn State. He doesn't have a academic background, and also he's drawn a lot, which is part of the reason he's drawn a lot of opposition from some members of the faculty and some students. But there's also been some sort of criticism of him that he's too close to business, that he's too conservative, those sorts of things. So this search process has been very controversial all the way along. They are down to 4 finalists at this point. As we sit here today, this week, those 4 finalists are going to be meeting with various community groups, faculty groups, those sorts of things to try to make the pitch, I guess. And then next week, the search committee will make a recommendation to the university's board of trustees, who will ultimately make that decision. There is one more step. It has to go to the University System's Board of Governors, but traditionally they've pretty much approved what the university's Board of Trustees have wanted. So we are at the point where it's decision time, and I think still Senator Thrasher is considered by most people the favorite for this position, but it has kicked up a lot of dust at Florida State.
Well, part of the discussion is really about the role of the president. Should that primarily be defined as an academic job, meaning a history of experience and leadership in the academic world? Or is that a role primarily of raising money for the university in a time when that's hard to get, or both, or whatever? Has that been the primary argument around which everything is flowing? That's
been one of the major themes and arguments of this whole thing. Probably nobody in Tallahassee knows how to work the levers of power better than John Thrasher. I mean, he's been around here for years. He was a House Speaker, the second Republican House Speaker in the state, very close to Jeb Bush. He's always been a confidant with Jeb Bush. He's a former Republican Party chairman. He's a chairman of Rick Scott's re-election campaign right now. He knows how to use power. He knows how to use the budget. He knows how to, a large part of what the university system has to do is go to the legislature and say, we need money, or we're trying to do this project or that project. And so he knows all that. In addition, he is very much in the power structure, the business structure of this state. So he can pick up a phone and make a phone call and maybe get some contributions for Florida State. So that is one of his major selling points. He can get things done, but he doesn't have any academic background. He's a lawyer, and frankly, as a lawyer, he was primarily a lobbyist for a lot of years, and so he isn't academic. He doesn't have an academic background. I think it's important to remember that Florida State has had a couple of previous presidents who were not maybe traditional university presidents. Sandy Dellenbert in the late 90s, mid 90s, I think he was appointed. He was a lawyer as well. He had been the law school dean there, but he had not, his background was not in academia before that. More recently, T.K. Weatherall, who was a former House Speaker, was the Florida State president. He did have an academic background. He had been the president of Tallahassee Community College. He also had some other positions. But his real, his claim to fame was politics. So, so Thrasher's, while his candidacy is different than theirs, it's not totally unique.
Well, one could suspect that with our fragmented and partisan environment today, that part of Senator Thrasher's resistance may be because of his political philosophy, that pretty strongly conservative. And there may be people that are not so much concerned about his academic credentials as the fact that he's a very strong, one would say right to the right Republican. And they don't want that for the head of the university.
Well, that has been one of the rallying cries among the faculty groups and members and students who have opposed his candidacy. They have raised questions about whether he's too close to big business. The Koch brothers have come into this debate. Personally, I think that there's a real question about the issue of him not having an academic background. I mean, that is an issue. I'm not really sure that there are arguments about his ties to big business or the Koch brothers or whoever else is going to really make much difference in this debate. If you look at the board of trustees of the university, it's chaired by Alan Bentz, who is a former House Speaker, also a very successful businessman. And you look at the other members of the trustees, also of the search committee. The search committee is chaired by a businessman out of Jacksonville. So, those people are probably not going to be turned off to John Thrasher because he is conservative or has business ties.
All right, let's move to a different ripple effect from this. Let's say that in the end, Senator Thrasher is selected to be the president of the Florida Senate. What impact might that have on the Florida Senate?
I think it could have a very significant impact. John Thrasher is the rules chairman in the Senate, which is a very important position. I mean, you kind of control the flow of legislation going within the Senate. You also are able to kind of broker deals with the House and the governor's office, and he also has been a top lieutenant to the Senate president. But I think there's sort of a more intangible value that John Thrasher brings to the Senate. Because he's been around a long time, because he knows how to sort of work the levers of power, he is, in the background, very influential with Republican members who, control the Senate by a large margin. And frankly, he can walk down to the House, where he used to be the Speaker, and get things done as well. And he also has ties to the governor's office. So if he leaves the Senate, I think that there's going to be somewhat of a void there. Voids always get filled in some way or another. But he is a very influential person. I think from the standpoint of the makeup of the Senate, it's not really going to make much difference. His district, he now lives in St. Augustine. His district is St. Johns County, Flagler County, Putnam County, and Volusia County. It's very conservative. I mean, this is a Republican stronghold. So if he leaves, chances are they're going to elect a Republican to take his place. So from the numbers game, if you will, is not going to really change. But no freshman is going to come in there and have the abilities that John Thrasher does.
Thank you, Jim. For more news about Florida politics and government, visit the Advances section of our website.